oh, it's flood zone X. Flood insurance is optional. It costs like $150 a year. And now it's like, you have to have you have to have flood insurance.
Gentrifying neighborhoods are exorbitantly expensive.
$1,000, $1,500.
Prices aren't doubling, they're not tripling, they're not quadrupling. I mean, they're going through the roof. Insurance pull out of not just Louisiana, California, Florida, the Carolinas, Texas. No one is invincible now.
That's crazy.
Hey guys, real quick, before we get into it, do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. That way, you don't miss out on any of the tea. Thanks. My lovely co-host, welcome back.
Hi, Charles.
What's our energy? What's our vibe?
Our vibe is pensive.
Pensive, I like that. My vibe right now is, in terms of this episode, a little agitated.
Okay.
You want to know why?
What's ruffling your feathers?
Ruffling my feathers is the fact that I'm a mid-30s millennial in a career, and I can't afford a house.
Yeah, that's rough.
It's rough.
That's rough.
And so I think I speak for a lot of millennials out there where we're living in a housing crisis.
Absolutely.
And not just millennials, but everyone in America. Big city, rural, small town, you name it, we're all suffering, right? And it is clear that this problem has come to an alarming level where something has to give and it cannot continue this way. So we're going to devote a whole topic to the housing crisis, particularly as it affects Louisiana. And then we're also going to do a deep dive into the flood insurance crisis. The two kind of go hand to hand in our state.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you and I come to this topic from different perspectives, right? I'm a renter and you're a homeowner.
I am.
So I think it'd be incumbent upon us for you to kind of start this off as a homeowner and kind of get your overview of thoughts, and then we'll just do a deep dive.
Yeah, so I guess I might be the millennial rarity at this point. I have owned my home for almost 14 years now.
It's been that long?
It's been that long.
Wow,
yeah.
okay.
Or actually almost 15. It's been 14
Girl, congrats.
years. But I will say that I got really lucky.
Okay.
You know, coming out of the 2008 financial crisis, you know, I had a lot of peers who were not able to like start in corporate jobs and build their career. And that wasn't necessarily the case for me. I was able to come out of university into, you know, a quote unquote big girl job. That allowed me the, you know, opportunity to start to save and work towards buying a house. I also bought my house at a time that, Jefferson Parish actually had a program for first-time home buyers.
They did.
To get assistance. I'm not sure if it's still around.
And what year was this when you bought your house?
It is. I bought my house in 2010.
2010. Okay.
So yeah, I was able to benefit from, you know, first-time home buyers program that was available. So, you know, the stars kind of aligned in a way that allowed me to do that. And it's something that I know most people my age today aren't able to do, but also most young adults kind of in a similar circumstance as I was at that time, you know, around 25, 24 years old, you know, at the start of your career, being able to kind of buy your first home, that's just not a reality for them. So I definitely recognize that, again, I might be a little bit of a rarity at this point, which is really unfortunate. But yeah, I have definitely been feeling the housing crunch. So even though I'm not necessarily in a situation where I'm unable to find housing, I definitely have felt the impact of the increase in the cost of housing, right? So you mentioned, you know, what we're experiencing here in Louisiana with regards to homeowners and flood insurance. The prices are exorbitant. We have many companies that are just flat out leaving the state. That was my personal experience with my homeowner's insurance.
Oh, you were one.
I had the same company for my homeowner's insurance from the time I bought my house until 2 years ago when they left the market. So that was just one of those situations of for years, there were like nominal increases, but towards the end, I mean, my insurance almost doubled in like a 2-year period. And then after that huge increase, they then said, okay, never mind, we're not writing policies in this state
Right.
anymore. We're not going to renew you. And they left. And so it's really difficult and it's really frustrating. It's also one of those things that I don't think we talk enough about for young first-time home buyers
Absolutely.
is especially in a state like Louisiana or similarly for folks in Mississippi, Florida, Texas that are frequently experiencing the effects of hurricanes is if the price of insurance goes up significantly, your monthly mortgage goes up significantly. And there's really no great way to predict that, right? So when I first bought my home, I, built out my budget of what things were going to cost and, even put in my Excel spreadsheet escalators for inflation and how things are changed. But there's no way to predict an increase of that nature, even over a 8-year period. And for sure, when you have these significant jumps year over year, I mean, I've had years where my insurance went up by $800+ That is really significant, and for it to happen year over year, that compounds extremely quickly. I don't even know how people who are on fixed incomes, people who've retired, worked so hard, you've got your home, you've retired and you've got that set budget and now you're looking at, insurance that started off as, $1,200 a month is now up to $1,200 a year is now up to $4,000 a year.
Yep.
That's crazy. And it's really frustrating. And it's also really disheartening because it doesn't look like it's going to slow down anytime soon.
And, I would like to provide some context of how we got here.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of the origins of this housing crisis in America really goes back to the 2008 recession. And as you stated, you bought your house 2 years into it. And we're still very much in the thick of it in 2010, right?
Right.
So we are now officially, 16 years removed from that recession. The facts are very evident. We have never resumed the level of constructing houses in America as we did prior to the 2008 recession. And we talked about this 2 episodes ago, right? The root cause solution of this is to build more housing, and we've never done that. And so that is kind of like the origins of how we got here. As it specifically affects—
Can I just add one thing too? About the timing, specifically for me here in New Orleans buying my home. The other thing I benefited from was the market course correction post-Katrina.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I had peers who bought in the same neighborhood as me. And when I say in the same neighborhood, I mean literally like cat a corner, I could see their homes from mine. And the prices they paid in 2007 and 2008 when they bought their homes versus what I paid for my home in 2010 was a drastic difference because housing prices in New Orleans in areas that didn't flood, and I live in a flood zone X, areas that didn't flood, they shot up, they skyrocketed. And so that was another thing that I will also say. We kind of had a double whammy here in New Orleans of 2005 Katrina hits, 2008 the recession hits, and in that time frame we're kind of still trying to recover from both of those things.
Absolutely. And to continue on that, because these timelines are important, Louisiana, and obviously Katrina, 2016 was also a critical year. That's when Baton Rouge experienced that terrible flooding. We're talking 10+ inches of rain. And what was so critical about that was it was a recognition in the state that this is no longer just a New Orleans problem.
Precisely.
That this is an everywhere in the state of Louisiana problem. And as we've been talking about, the moment something becomes a problem that affects the masses, then we decide to come up with solutions for this, right? And so again, 2016 was a turning point. The final critical turning point was the back-to-back hurricanes in 2021.
Yeah.
Ida, I can't remember the other one, but they pummeled Lake Charles, and it exacerbated the housing problem. And it just we have now had to come face forward with this in a way that we've never had to, and it's dire now. Right? This is affecting every part of the state, and our state leaders. I will give them credit; they are very much spearheading this. And what I most admire about the work they're doing is they're really trying to get the nation to understand this is everywhere now.
Right.
We're seeing insurance pull out of not just Louisiana, California, Florida, the Carolinas, Texas. No one is invincible now. Whether it's wildfires, flooding, hurricanes. We saw North Carolina.
I was going to say, we just saw that with Hurricane Helene in North Carolina.
thought it was immune to this, right? So it has become abundantly clear. And that rhetoric from 2005 with Katrina is so dramatic than what it is now, right? That we thought twice about rebuilding New Orleans. We would never think twice now because it's everywhere. So the point of this is that there's been so many different things that have led up to this event, right? Which is this housing crisis we're in. And, it affects different places differently, right? So we break down Louisiana, the crisis is everywhere, but it operates a little bit differently in New Orleans versus in small town Louisiana.
Yeah.
So New Orleans, the rent isn't crazy expensive. The neighborhoods that didn't flood after Katrina that are, i.e. gentrifying neighborhoods are exorbitantly expensive. It's displacing people who lived in those neighborhoods.
Yeah.
It's displacing them to the outskirts. So we've just created this bifurcated city in terms of the rent, and then the housing is insanely unaffordable.
Right.
And, I keep thinking of this one news story that stands out to me and it focused on this woman uptown, wealthy uptown. She had to sell her house because she can no longer afford it. Like that. Yeah. That's obviously an extreme example, but that really drives home that this has affected the wealthy communities in Louisiana now. So we have got to come to a grappling of how do we fix this? And I agree with you. I don't know, to be honest, what the answer is. I think we're trying to piecemeal some strategies. Some seem a little more promising than others.
Yeah.
But this is, I would argue, an existential crisis facing the state, facing the South, of where do we go from here?
Absolutely.
Right? Do you want to kind of add anything on that in terms of like maybe how it affects small town Louisiana? Rent, housing shortages, affordability.
I think a lot of times when we talk about the housing crisis on a much larger scale, a lot of times we're talking about, or people perceive that we're talking about urban centers,
Absolutely.
right? Especially when you talk about affordable housing, it is critical and important to have those conversations about, well, all of the people who work in these cities and help, things go round have to now live 60 minutes outside of the city. That's a problem. But the lack of affordable housing isn't exclusive to our urban centers, right? Our rural communities are also experiencing some of those still same crunches, shortages in housing. We've even seen, the USDA has programs around building affordable housing specifically in rural communities for that reason. I think that's something that really started as an urban issue. Rent skyrocketing, places are getting gentrified. We are now starting to really see that trickle out to our much smaller cities and then even further into our very rural communities, that those same issues, we have slowed in building houses. The cost of materials to build houses has increased exponentially. Even to maintain and repair your home now, if you are someone who owns, maintenance is now exorbitantly more expensive. When we talk about the insurance piece, areas that were previously, it doesn't flood, you don't need flood insurance, or your flood insurance is much cheaper if you choose to buy it, are now paying, again, $1,000, $1,500 for insurance that used to be $300.
And let's be clear, these prices aren't doubling, they're not tripling, they're not quadrupling. I mean, they're going through the roof.
Yeah.
In abrupt, not a gradual, but like 1 year to the next.
Yeah. And so we don't see a change in wages. We are not seeing, increases in what people are taking in as far as income in their households, but those expenses are growing at a rate that is just not sustainable. And again, it's not just in our urban areas. It is, our communities beyond our urban areas. And I would even argue that those are our communities that are the most vulnerable and the most susceptible, and probably feeling this the worst because nobody is talking about how
forgotten
it's
communities.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's rather disturbing in this conversation is we're focused on the housing, and we've talked about flooding, but flooding is a whole nother beast.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's happening is that as these prices have gone up, people are just foregoing flood insurance, period.
Altogether. Right. And
that sets up a disastrous, pun intended,
And
scenario.
no homeowners insurance covers flood, right?
Correct.
So it doesn't matter whether the company writes in this state or not, whether you go through the Citizens program, no homeowners insurance covers flood. So if you opt out of it, what does that mean for
Correct.
when the inevitable happens, right? Because we know no matter what, we cross our fingers, we hope, we pray, we light our candles, we say our novenas. The storm comes, right?
Yeah.
Big or small, we all take our turn. Louisiana, Mississippi, Florida, Texas, we all get a turn each, hurricane season. Some, unfortunately, more than others. But we know it's going to come. And so the fact that people have to take that chance, right? That you're just sort of waiting for the moment when the flood comes and you finally got to go, I guess I can't do it anymore. I can't be here anymore.
Kind of the epicenter of this in the state is, and I follow this pretty closely, is Terrebonne Parish. Right?
Yeah.
So Homa, not Homa, like the communities outside of
it,
Homa.
yeah.
One particularly interesting case study is kind of the indigenous communities in Terrebonne Parish, that they've actually been at the forefront of this in terms of the federal government literally relocating these communities.
Yeah.
It's gotten to a point in our coastal parishes where you cannot build unless your house is raised.
Yeah,
No
I mean, you look
questions
down
asked.
at like in Pointe-aux-Champs, that is either it's on stilts 20 feet up, or they're like, no, we're relocating, we're moving this building, you can't be here anymore.
And another really, I just thought of this, another really, really interesting is Laplace.
Yeah.
St. John, is that St. John?
St. John Parish.
So what's happening in Laplace is they're so interesting in that, they're on the outskirts of the metro area between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. They're outside of the levee system.
Right.
And they have experienced almost, I think 3 at this point, back to back severe floods. And what's happened is it's created a catch-22. They can't sell their houses because no one's buying the houses, and no one's buying the houses because it's not in the federal levee system.
Right.
So it's created this stagnant housing market in that parish, and it's bad.
But also the shift, right? How many people do you know moved to Laplace because they were avoiding the flooding?
Exactly.
Right?
And so it's created this cycle where it's like, whoa, what do we do with this?
What do we do?
So what's ended up happening is the state has taken on a very daunting task of trying to come up with remedies for this. And we saw it earlier this year when the governor convened a special session, in which part of that special session was explicitly to come up with some type of solutions.
Right.
And, kind of 3 big things came out of that. One was kind of recreating a structure of having those insurance firms that left to come back. The second one was the roof fortification program.
Yeah.
And then also where FEMA comes into play. So the new FEMA maps, what data was used to create those maps in the first place. So let's talk about those 3 things,
Yes,
right?
let's get into it.
These solutions. Which of those 3 do you think is like a good, route way to really get us out of this?
So I think talking about the FEMA maps is interesting, and what data was used to make those decisions, and how that is going to impact some of the solutions proposed.
Why so? Like, what in particular about that is?
So
it's not very transparent,
right?
Right? It's like we know that we need to make changes, but like we need to have a conversation of what variables are going into this,
and also too, the marked changes we've seen, like the lag in that data really reflecting what is actually here in the state, right? Because again, to the point of like the example of Laplace, in a very short period of time, we have seen a dramatic change in how they are impacted by flooding. And we know while there are private entities out there that offer flood insurance, the primary place that people get flood insurance is through FEMA's program. I know even for me personally as a homeowner, again, what started as when I bought my house back in 2010, it's flood zone X. Flood insurance is optional. It costs like $150 a year. And now it's like, you have to have flood insurance. I don't care that it's called flood zone X. And it's going to cost you
how times have
$1,500,
changed.
right?
Wow.
And so that is, again, a very short period of time that has changed dramatically. And if the FEMA data is what's underlying how we're making those decisions, how accurate is it to
That's
where the pain points currently are. And I
correct.
think that's one of the biggest problems with that.
You know what? I'm gonna just throw it out there. I think, and this really came to light after the Asheville flooding. I'm truly hoping this leads to and I don't know what this looks like because devil's in the details, but a national insurance program, right? Because it's a national problem.
Right.
But again,
But we
that's,
know.
right,
We-
exactly. And so the other kind of solution was this deregulation.
Yeah.
To make it like, they can, part of the new policy is you can be dropped now, right? And the argument was that this creates a more conducive environment to have people re-enter
To the market, right.
I don't know if that's going to work. It's kind of like on the surface.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, again, if you understand the concept of risk pools, when we allow cherry picking of that nature, are you actually creating a viable and sustainable
Yes, that's
risk
a great
pool?
way.
Or are you just creating an environment where insurance companies are able to cherry pick those policies that they think will just make them money because people are paying their premiums and they're never filing any claims?
And what ends up happening is they resort to the state program, which is the
It was a
citizens
citizens program, right?
And what's interesting about that program is that automatically, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's 10% higher.
Oh yeah,
Like it's
already built into
right?
that. Yeah.
But those two notwithstanding, there is one very tangible, very good program.
So there is a bright spot, right?
Yeah,
Do you want to talk about
yeah.
that one?
So the bright spot it's called the roof fortification program. Interestingly, this is modeled off of Alabama. So
Okay.
Alabama was the first state to do this. And what this does is it creates a tax credit to where you can apply, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's $10,000 to get a fortified roof that can withstand, according to whatever metrics insurance uses, hurricane, winds, etc. Wind, because it's the roof, obviously, right? It has proven to be wildly successful in its first 2 years, exceeding expectations. And I think this has become a bright spot because what ends up happening is if you alter your roof through this program and get that fortified roof, insurance programs are required to lower your deductible.
Okay.
Right. Now, again, this becomes a better functioning system when it's aggregated in mass participates in this, right? At first, it's really geared towards the coastal parishes and it's kind of going further inland. But again, we're seeing this to be very successful to the point where even the governor himself has said, we should expand this to low-income households, right?
Yeah.
Work with agencies to get them these credits because even though that credit provides some money, you still have to fill in the gap.
Right.
Right. But what we're seeing in Alabama is that this is creating a more competitive, sustainable market because you are preparing your house for like the worst of the worst, which is the roof.
And some of what makes insurers leery of kind of taking on this risk, you're mitigating.
Yeah, great.
And
it's a mitigation effort.
Yeah. And that is, I think, a really important piece is really building that infrastructure for mitigation efforts to encourage private insurers to return to our market.
I'm glad you said that because we often are very reactive to this, but I think the solution is now proactive mitigating factors, which again goes back to things that we keep talking about. This is a statewide issue now.
Absolutely.
Right.
So we've kind of touched on, I think, two crises that are running parallel for us right now: housing and the housing crunch, as well as insurance and those expenses that are increasing exponentially. What are some of your final thoughts on where we're going from here?
I ironically have hope on this topic because I think this is one of the few issues where we all agree.
Yeah.
Left, right, blue, red, north, south. Because we live in an age of climate change. It is undeniable. These disasters are increasing in frequency, increasing in intensity. It's unavoidable. It's inescapable. And if we really, and I think it's happening, and I'm hopeful that it's happening, is that this can become a bipartisan consensus of like, we need a solution to this.
Absolutely.
And that is the thing that keeps me hopeful that we can find some common ground because it is a recognition that this affects all of us in every community. This is one of those existential threats that like, it needs to be addressed now. What about you?
I agree. I think it is one of those rare issues that
Exactly.
we don't necessarily all agree on the cause, We all do agree that we are in a crisis.
Yeah.
And I think that level of cohesion and being able to say, yep, there's a problem here, and we universally agree there is a problem here, is needed in order to enact the level of change that's going to be required. Some of the things that we've kind of continued to discuss throughout the episodes and our seasons of our podcast around development and infrastructure projects and dollars coming into our communities, I think will eventually, hopefully, fingers crossed, address some of the issues around the housing crisis and the crunch we're seeing around affordability and availability of housing. I think I'm a little less hopeful on the insurance front.
Fair.
Because I do believe the real solution there is going to require a level of governmental intervention that our current government and administration, at least in the state of Louisiana, probably doesn't believe in.
Yeah.
I think personally that the level of oversight and change required to really make a difference as far as keeping those prices down, we're not there yet as far as a vision forward that is truly bipartisan and going to be truly effective. But, I'm always open for having my mind changed and being proven wrong.
Yes. Just like all our other topics, this is going to have to be something that we continue to follow.
Yeah.
Like, this is not going away.
No, it's not going away. It's not going away, and it's not slowing down.
No. Oh, if anything, it's speeding up.
It's speeding up, yeah.
Right. So again, we'll continue to follow this. It's just one of those issues where, it's all these issues that we talk about matter, but if the state isn't here,
right,
then it's irrelevant.
Then it's
right,
it's a
and
moot
that's
point.
what kind of supersedes this about all other issues. Like this is a matter of like our actual existence on the map of being here, and having housing and insurance to protect that housing.
To protect that housing, absolutely.
Important topic. We'll continue to follow.
And we'll continue to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Well, thank you.
Thanks
Charles.
for sharing your experience about being a homeowner. I hope to get to that point one day. So
we'll get you there.
Till next time.
I have some land down in Terrebonne Parish I want to sell you.
Ooh, okay, cool. All right, till next time.
Till next time. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Pelican Briefs.
If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
If you are loving the show, you can help us keep the conversation going by supporting us on Patreon.
Your contribution on Patreon ensures we can continue producing quality content you love.
Click the link in the description to become a patron today.
Until next time, this is Pelican Briefs.